Hi, everyone. Welcome to Daily Revelations. So we are diving into Ruth 4 today for this week. And I wanted to start out by talking about contracts, relationships, but how are relationships part of contracts? Because in today's society, the way we conduct business, at least in the Western world, is we write up a contract and it's all about business. It's all about what you need to do, who needs to do it, and how you need to follow the rules to stay within that contract. And we separate that out, unfortunately, but we forget that when we have a relationship with someone, we also develop a contract. And back in biblical times, the way Leviticus and the law that God wrote up, he intermingled both. And it's a lesson that we can really glean from and learn from in our own lives to see how we can have the holding power of relationships within a contract. So what do I have that I'm talking about? So in Ruth 4, Naomi has this piece of land that her husband didn't sell. Now, forgive me for in Ruth 1, I thought maybe he had sold it. I haven't studied Ruth, and I'm going through this week by week with you. I've read through it many times, but when you read through and just kind of skim over stuff, you kind of don't notice tiny things. So anyways, Naomi still had this land. She knew she needed to sell it. She was a widow. She had no way to make money. Yes, her daughter-in-law was getting able to get some food for them, but that was it. She had to sell this land, but she knew that this relative that she had to sell it to first probably wasn't the best person to buy it because there was a relationship involved in the contract. And that meant that Ruth would go with the contract and become the wife of whoever bought the land. And her mother-in-law knew this and wanted the best for her daughter-in-law. So she held out and said, God, show us how we can get around this first relative so that maybe you have the next one down in line, which she was looking at Boaz, which now we know as we're reading through Ruth 4. But that was part of the deal. And part of the deal was that because this relative then had this land, the firstborn child of Ruth would be the inheritor back of that land. And so there was relationship, but there was contract. And there was all these things that required sacrificial living because you were getting into this contract, not because you just gained the land, but you gained the people. And not only did you gain the people, but you gained them so that you could give back to them even more. And God knew that in order to have a perfect contract and for someone to be able to take over that land, that they had to be willing to do something that was of no benefit to themselves. And how much, when we get into relationships, do we forget that it's not just about us? It's about sacrificially living for the other person that we're in that relationship with. And I made a list. I was like, yes, in marriage, when we get married, we sometimes forget this isn't all about me. My daughter and I were watching Say Yes to the Dress this weekend. What a messed up society we live in when it's all about me and all about, this and that. These are contracts, relational contracts we're getting into. And if we forget that this relationship is to be mutually beneficial, just as much to my spouse, and as we become parents to our children, and probably even more so to them, and even in friendships. When we develop friendships, is it all about me? Or am I realizing I have to give in order to be a good friend? So, those are things that you have to think about. I even wrote down, even the volunteers that I work with that in my organization, it's not about them just coming and working for me. And oftentimes when people have come in to volunteer because they want to get their name out there and they want to be, related to an organization that's doing things, it doesn't last for very long because we have to be able to give to each other. I'm going to pour into you, but I need you to maybe do some things sacrificially on the other end too, to make this relationship work. And so it's definitely something to think about in our society in today's age, where it's all about me and what can I get out of this. We have to turn that back around, because God says we need to say, what can I bring to this? How can I help others? And make this contract relational and mutually beneficial. So sorry I went a little long today, but I hope you're enjoying your first day in Ruth 4, and I'm excited about what God's going to teach us this week. So bye, everybody. Thanks for joining me on Daily Revelations.